stop utilizing this story that's not serving us and really step in, like you said, step into that purpose, that power, that impact that we can create. But getting in that right state of mind is what matters, because if you're coming from like, oh, poor me, I'm not enough, like I'm not going to do a good job, then chances are you might not, because you're not in the right state of mind. Can we do it?
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Influential Women, where we empower, connect, and inspire women who are leading, creating, and redefining what is possible. I'm your host, Jody O'Brien. Today, we're joined by Angela Tait, leadership strategist, best-selling author, podcast host, and founder of Tait Consulting. Angela works with CEOs and HR leaders to build high-performing, people-first organizations. With over a decade of experience in talent acquisition, organizational development, and executive coaching, she helps leaders scale their teams with intention and without burning themselves out or their people. Whether you're leading a team, building a company, or navigating a career pivot, today's conversation is absolutely for you. Angela, welcome. Glad to have you.
Thanks for having me, Jody. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. Well, so much of your work, from the human capital playbook to the way that you've built your entire consulting practice, really centers on getting the right people in the right roles and helping them thrive. I think everyone can agree, whether you're CEO or not, that this is one of the hardest parts of building anything. Most of us have made mistakes, both personally, of course, and professionally, either by aligning with the wrong people or by not being the kind of leader who brought out the best in them. So for those of us building and scaling teams, where do you see people go wrong most often? And what advice do you have for making better people decisions?
I would say it starts at the beginning, right in the hiring process, which is why I'm very passionate about the talent acquisition piece, which is really entailing finding the right fit, not only personality-wise, but also for the vision, the mission, the values, making sure that the person coming on board is going to mesh with the team, fit in with the culture is where you're going to see the long-term fit. The other big crucial piece really is onboarding. People are deciding within the first couple of days, within the first week, if they're going to stay somewhere long term. And so making sure that you have a strong onboarding, you're not throwing them into the fire and saying, good luck, let me know if you need a life jacket or whatnot, but actually supporting them, giving them clear expectations of what 30, 60, 90 days looks like, checking in, having them meet the team. So there's that inclusivity and they feel like they're part of something and they're not on the outside looking in.
That's such a good answer. Well, a big part of your work has been helping companies build people-first cultures. And you're also the host of the Mom Me podcast. So excited to learn more about this. And this is where you really talk to entrepreneurs and corporate leaders about navigating leadership, family, identity. It's like the crossroads of all of those things. Across both of those worlds, you've seen how working moms are expected to carry everything at home while also being quietly unsupported at work. Why do you think companies still miss this?
That's a great question. A lot of times it's really not knowing what you don't know. And so there's leaders that are even family men, they are fathers. It's the type of environment they're creating. What I mean by that is they might not have a lot of flexibility at work. And so for attracting moms or women, women that are moms into their organization is a challenge because there's not a lot of flexibility. They have to be on site Monday through Friday, 8 to 6. And so with someone that has to go pick up their kids or might want to show up for different volunteer opportunities, that hybrid schedule is going to be a lot more attractive. So I think it's just not understanding what type of environment. I don't know. I guess I'm still trying to get to the root of why this is still a dilemma in 2026, especially for men that have families. I think it's just they don't realize or recognize that that is a pivotal thing to have that flexibility and hybrid opportunity because of the type of work that they're doing. They might not have clear metrics. And when you don't have clear metrics, a lot of times you feel like you have to see the person in office doing the work versus trusting them that they might get it done on their own at home, or it could be even like security or type of work that the person is doing. So there's some different challenges to still work through, and I'm interested to see what the next few years brings with AI coming on the scene.
I mean, it feels like it's just such a slow crawl towards progress, right? We've all felt it. When we go into the office and we work a 9 to 5 job, there's that feeling of you want to be a leader. As a female, you want to step up and say, hey, I can fulfill my role, my duties, my job, and go volunteer for, mom and daughter day or, be the parent of the week day or whatever it may be. But it takes us as leaders and employees to step up and show that we can be both of those things and do them equally wonderfully to start shifting that, don't you think?
Yes, absolutely. And I also think the dilemma is the generational gap. Generation X, baby boomers, they were like, well, this is how it's always been done. And I did it, especially even women, right, that are mothers. I did it when my kids were young, so you can do it too. And so I think that mindset needs to be shifted of, wow, look at all this opportunity we have nowadays with the technology we have. You can do stuff from your phone. You can take a laptop on the go. It doesn't need to be the same as it was when they were in their 20s and 30s and 40s grinding. So I think it's just as the generations, like the baby boomers are retiring and Generation X are moving up. And it's not all Generation X and it's not all baby boomers, because I have seen some of you know those generations on the cutting edge. It's just sometimes a mindset shift.
100%. As an Xer, I feel like the sandwich generation. There's this mindset I'm stuck in of like, no, you work until the work is done.
Mhm.
And then there's also that feeling in the back of my head like work life balance, work life balance. Listen to your
The
millennial
constant tug
friends.
of war.
Listen to your friends. Watch your friends. We watch the younger generation have such balance, and it is so freeing as an Xer to see it.
Mhm.
But grasping it, accepting it, being okay with it, making it matter, right? That it's not just you don't have to be, nose to the grindstone, working until to the bone when that's not necessarily the best for you. The best employee you can be basically is when you're taking care of yourself. It's like pouring out of a full cup. And
Yes.
so I love that. I love this conversation because it is such, yeah.
Well, and
We're
something to
sandwiched.
add with that is like the hustle culture, right? Where a lot of men have said, like, grind, you only need 4 hours of sleep, like, get it done. And back in the day, was it Gary Vee, like Tony Robbins, all of that, like they have evolved too. And they've recognized, like, sleep is actually really important. 4 hours is not enough. Your health comes first, because if you're not healthy, you really can't do anything else in life, because that becomes your focus, is your health. And so it is, again, things are starting to shift. And I think as the baby boomers get out of the workforce completely, people are getting more information. They are able to recognize how important, like you said, it is to take care of yourself, and that women and men work differently. Women are multitaskers. We thrive with multitasking. We're doing it all the time and we can do it quite well. Where a lot of men, not to generalize, but that is more like that's a challenge for them. They're more focused on one thing at a time. Not saying one is better than the other. I've heard actually a lot of studies multitasking is not good, but women can still do that quite well. And so it's just all evolving. And over the next 5 to 10 years, I think there's going to be a huge pivot. And especially with women getting in more leadership positions. I talked to a president the other day of a construction company. And she said, right before she was the president overseeing the organization, which has over, thousands of employees, there was a baby boomer and they didn't want to have a lot of flexibility and work from home and that balance. She's a mother. She created that. they have more females in the organization in a construction industry, 51% females. Because of the changes she made with flexibility, they're able to attract more females and they're doing a great job. And again, I think it's just more women coming into power, creating that opportunity and seeing the results and the data to prove that flexibility is a good thing. You have higher retention, which is good for your bottom line and your profits, and attracting more females into the organization.
100%. So tell me about this Mom Me podcast. I'm so curious.
Yes. So, really, it's looking at the me of being a mom. A lot of times when you get into motherhood, you lose your identity, as I'm sure you know, as being a mom. And in those early stages, and having a 4 and a 6-year-old, that happened to me. I was in, postpartum, a little bit depression, feeling isolated, not really knowing who I was anymore and trying to get back to that old self of like, oh, I wish, I had my freedom, or I wish I could go on more adventures and travel, or, looking back at the past. And it's good sometimes to take a moment and reflect of who you were or what was done before, but it's also vital to look at the present and the future, and be present. So I wanted to talk to other working moms or moms that I sometimes struggle with the working mom, because I heard something the other day that said we don't say working dads. So I've been trying to stop saying working moms, but in regards to just talking to other women that are able to find the flow between showing up, being a mother, while also striving and exceeding at work, or in the work they're doing. And so I wanted to learn from other people. I wanted to get my identity back and create a community. And I thought I could do that with starting this podcast and having conversations. And I did. I felt like last year, or actually it was now November 2024, I started the podcast. We just did 56 episodes. We have had a lot of women be vulnerable and have these honest conversations, provide tips and tools and resources. I've learned so much about how to have, just that opportunity to be a wonderful mom, give myself grace, also be a ambitious entrepreneur. So it's been very eye-opening and insightful, and I've loved every part of it.
Man, we're so lucky to have people like you in the arena. Cause I remember 16 years ago having that first baby and feeling like, man, what's my identity? Why do I feel like I need to be doing something else? Why isn't this mom role fulfilling me? And I remember the
Mhm.
guilt. And about 6 months in, I was like, I need to do something. So I remember just like calling a nonprofit and saying, can I volunteer? Do you need somebody to help? Like, I would be more than willing to help and work from home. It was before work from home stuff
Mhm.
really took off. And then also, it was before we had podcasts, which
Yeah.
we could tune into and get encouragement. So, thank you for what you're doing in that space, because I know a lot of us have struggled with our identity in those moments. And it really brings up kind of the decision making process. So, a lot of women like us have experienced what it feels like to have to make like an impulsive decision, or make an impulsive decision, or make a pivot. And maybe they've been laid off, or maybe they've quit without a plan. Maybe they've shifted direction really entirely. We've all had those moments. But you talk about reframing these as strategic turning points. How do you help women write the narrative around those moments? And what's the power in reframing, that pivot?
Yeah, it's all about our perspective and the way that we lay it out, whether it's you're getting back into the workforce and you were just at home, right, taking care of your 3-year-old for the last 3 years. And so the way that and I'm going to talk about it from a framework of getting back into the job market, because there's a lot of women that, like you said, maybe it's an impulsive decision, maybe it's a thought out one of, okay, I need to take care of this child. Maybe my husband is making, or my spouse is making more money than I am. So I'm going to be the one that stays home instead of putting them in daycare or getting a nanny because of the cost. And so now you're faced with, you've been out of the job market for 3 years. and employers will look down on that, or recruiters. And I shouldn't say they look down on it, but it might not be favorable for you to getting a job. And so looking at how could you reframe that situation? How can you maybe talk about the volunteer work you did or something so it doesn't look like there's a gap in your resume, to make it be more attractive for someone reaching out or not even knowing who you are, right? They're looking at a resume, a one pager, or looking at your LinkedIn and keeping those up to date. The skills that you've been learning over the last few years or just different things that you've been doing. If you're a PTO mom, you're like a classroom mom. I mean, there's like different things that you are working on every day. And a lot of times that goes unnoticed. And so just reframing that situation is an easy one to kind of point out and create a new narrative.
Such a good point. I remember too, right? Being like, okay, I want to stay relevant. I want to stay relevant. If I just work at this nonprofit or if I pick up these skills in social media when it was kind of first happening, if I stay relevant, if this is good for my resume, when I was staying at home. And I remember the pressure of feeling like, am I going to be able to find something when they go to school? Or when
Hmm.
the time comes, am I going to be able to re enter? And re-entering was way more difficult than I thought it was going to be in so many ways from a corporate standpoint. And I love those companies like momjobs.com.
Yeah.
There's so many women out there who have opened doors for people, and it's so exciting. I know that
I
you
think when it's when you experience it yourself and you're like, "Gosh, this is so hard. Why is this such a challenge?" Because that was another reason I advocate for moms that are working is because when my son, after a couple months, I went back to corporate and I was working my job and I had a nanny that was taking care of my son. And even during COVID, when people were like, "Oh, I was traveling and I got all this time with my child," I was like head was down. I was grinding at work and I felt like I missed those crucial years because I did put my career as a priority. I had worked really hard to get to this point and I didn't want to give it up. And as much as my son meant to me, I felt like I was getting enough time while I was still trying to prove myself, right? Like I might be working from home and I might be a mom, but I am going to make sure that like I'm getting the job done 110%. And that's sometimes the struggle is like trying to constantly say, I was worth the hire, like proving yourself and like going to the point of burnout because you're working so hard and trying to, again, be that great mom that you're striving for every day.
it's exhausting. And even when a boss will say, it's okay. Yeah, you can go or take
Yeah.
the afternoon off, spend time. This is a flexible job. This is work family balance. Well, in the end, there's some question that comes into our mind, right? Where we're like, I
Mhm.
don't think so.
Yeah.
You
Am I
know,
am I not
are
gonna
you
get that
telling the truth?
promotion or get
Yeah.
that salary
Yes.
increase because this is gonna be held over my head, or am I gonna get fired or let go, right? Because, yeah, it's like that little voice in the background that's like, "But is it okay? Am
But
I
is
okay?"
it? Is it okay? Cause you just passed me over, or now I feel like you think like you can't trust me. We get in our heads about it. And I don't know if there'll ever be a company or if that will ever change, right? Is there ever going to be a company that's going to convince us that it's okay to take the time with the family? I don't know. I'm sure they're out there, but man, they're so hard to find. And I think like you and I, that's why we go on these entrepreneurial journeys where we're like, no, it's okay for us. We'll make our own company.
Yeah,
We'll do
we'll
it
carve
on
our own path.
we'll carve our own path. And that's where the ultimate freedom is. And it shouldn't be that way. So
Mhm.
I'm glad that you're fighting for that because man, there are women out there who need it, who need us to be on their side if they're not starting their own companies or doing their own thing. So awesome. Well,
Well,
yeah.
to that point too, I talked to a mom the other day. She's an attorney, and one of the pre-screen questions is, "What's a weakness?" Right? What's a strength? What's a weakness, or an opportunity for improvement? And she said, "Well, a weakness is probably that I'm a mom." And that just, oh my gosh, I'm like emotional, right? Like I was like, "Well, let's not put that as a weakness because." I don't see that as a weakness. So let's think of something professionally that would be a weakness. And so it's just even stuff like that, right? Thinking like, oh, that's a weakness because I'm a mom. I might have my kids get sick, or there might be something that I need to attend. And so I can't show up, like maybe 100% because of these things that might hold me back. But really, if you think about it, even if you're a mom or not, like you might have parents that get sick, right? And then you have to take care of them. You might have a dog that gets sick. You might have your own self if you're not taking care of your health. I mean, there's so many things that happen in life that it's kind of crazy that we are so hard on ourselves as moms, thinking like, oh, if I'm a mom, it's a weakness to, be in the job market or something where
I
really
cannot imagine my husband saying, "One of my weaknesses is that I'm a dad and I have to
exactly.
leave and go pick up my kid." Like, I can't imagine. But why is it so easy for us to hear that from a woman and be like, "Yeah, I can see that. I can feel what she means in that moment." Man, I don't know. Things gotta change. They gotta
Yeah.
change. Well, you say perspective shapes 99% of the narrative, and it's a powerful statement. Perspective shapes 99% of the narrative. For women who have internalized someone else's definition of what their career setback or pivot means, how do they start to reclaim that narrative and redefine it on their own terms?
Gosh, this is a great question and it's very timely. Yesterday was the first day. Today, there's another one for Tony Robbins has a summit, like a Rise Up Summit. And one of the things he mentioned yesterday, which is so true, is the three S's is your story, or sorry, your state, your story, and your strategy. And so that is probably the best advice I could give is how do you reclaim your story is taking ownership of it and thinking about like what's your state of mind, make sure it's at a peak state, and then how do you recraft your story to be positive instead of negative and or a victim mindset, and then getting a new strategy, right? Like how are you going to move ahead in this new direction with where you want to go.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And it's such good advice. Well, influence, regardless of where it comes from, is definitely rooted in trust. It's rooted in clarity, consistency, and it sounds simple, but I know from talking to women leaders that it's not easy to build like that kind of influence, especially if you don't have a title giving you automatic authority. Like over here, we're making up our own titles, right? 'Cause we have our own companies. But at Influential Women, influence really isn't about titles. It's about impact. And so you talk about influence rooted in trust and clarity, but how does a woman build that kind of influence from the ground up?
Using your voice for good with your platforms, with your friends, in the community. It's lifting other women up instead of seeing them as competition. It's about mentoring and supporting others. There's a lot that we can do as women for other women. And that's the challenge sometimes is instead of seeing others as equals, we might be seeing them as less. So I think it's really going back to that is just continuing to show up and use our voice and advocating on behalf of others.
There's such a, the term well, we all do, this imposter syndrome. Um, we all want to do what we're called to do. We want to be able to use our voices in a powerful way. But there's a lot of external pressure that we receive for these milestones. And you talk about letting go of someone else's definition of success and building one that actually fits our lives. So, how do you help women give themselves that permission to do that? And how do you handle the guilt or doubt that comes with stepping off someone else's ladder and dealing with that imposter syndrome?
It's really getting back to the story we're telling ourselves. If we are getting down that we can't achieve something or we're not good enough, then it goes back to us taking a back seat instead of being the driver in our story. Something I heard the other day, again, Tony Robbins, he's fresh on my mind because I listened to a podcast with him on the Diary of a CEO and then for his summit is we're more stressed when we're managing our life versus creating our life. So the creator brought us into this world, and so if we are creating, we're going to be a lot more fulfilled and happy. And so recognizing that and not putting a narrative that doesn't exist, like imposter syndrome, is going to help us achieve greatness.
So well said. Tony Robbins has been around forever. And he never gets old. He's constantly reinventing himself and saying the most amazing things. I love it. I need to go listen to that podcast. Well, we talk about transparency and communication, and how important that is for women, and how it's really non-negotiable. It builds trust. Obviously, it helps with retention. But in that practical sense, what does transparency look like when you're a leader managing a team? And what are you trying to communicate? How often? And what changes when leaders are really prioritizing transparency?
Transparency goes back to clear communication and not making up stories or leaving certain details out. A lot of people leave an organization, and when I do exit interviews, it's because of communication, lack of communication. And so that's where check in meetings are important, give clear direction of where the company's going or different things that might be changing if someone's going to be retiring or an important leader is transitioning out. This is where transparency matters because if one person gets a hold of the information and the gossip starts spreading throughout the organization, it can create all different types of stories, which leads people to exit because they don't have the correct story. So, transparency is really being open and communication and not holding back certain details that could affect the company or the employees that are involved in it. But you do have to be, I want to say strategic and intentional because you can also overshare and create a lot of uncertainty, which can also make people run the opposite direction. So I think it is trying to navigate the balance of not sharing too much, but also not sharing anything at all. So it's finding the balance between communicating effectively and efficiently of what matters.
And those of us that are like team members under leaders that are communicating, love those leaders, love the transparency, not too much, but just
Mhm,
enough. Yeah,
mhm,
that's always a good
mhm.
thing. Well, you mentioned that there's one mindset shift that's made the biggest impact on your career and your life. So I'd love to hear more about that. And more importantly, how you help other women discover and implement their own version of that shift. What's the mindset shift and how does it change everything?
It's just a positive reframe and the sense of taking ownership for what we have control over. A lot of times we want to control others or different situations that we honestly have no control over. And so it creates us to spin and get frustrated and out of control. So it's going back to Mel Robbins has this quote, right? Let them. And so what do I have control of right now? How can I take ownership? Getting grounded and present and clear on your direction, and then supporting others and then getting support in the process.
Before we close today, where are you with your career and your family and your goals? I'm so curious.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like there's a long way to go. I do like to stop and reflect that I've come a long way. I mean, from the person that graduated college years ago, that I had a media management degree. I thought I wanted to be in production and casting and then completely pivoted, wanted to go into like organization development and HR. And it was a long journey to get there. So I'm really proud of myself for staying persistent and keeping on the path that I felt was true for myself. There's still a lot of opportunity though and impact that I want to create. And so I feel like I'm halfway there. I'm halfway, but knowing that there's still a lot of opportunity to get things done, and chipping away at it every day, being 1% better to continue on this beautiful journey of life, while also trying to raise two beautiful boys to be men that are also creating impact in the world, but are serving society in a positive way.
Well, it's funny, we talked before we started today about being a boy mom, and it is not for the faint of heart. Get ready, buckle up, because being a boy mom is eye-opening. I shared just a little bit that, the 16-year-old is kind of got a crush. All right, we're gonna ask someone to a dance. And my
Mhm.
mom heart is just like, what? What? You don't wanna go to dinner with me? So, I wish you the best of luck being that boy mom.
Thank you. Yes, it's definitely been a wild ride so far, so I can only imagine at 16 what to expect. I was holding my 4-year-old yesterday, and I said, "You know, one day you're gonna be taller than I am and stronger, and you're gonna carry me." And he's like, "No, I don't think so." And I was like, "You just wait."
I have this video that is so precious of my little guy, and I say, "Are you gonna drink warm milk forever?" And he says, "Yes." And he's probably about 3, and I said, "Well, who's gonna warm it up for you when you grow up?" And he said, "You are." And I said, "No, when I'm not here, who's gonna warm up your milk?" He said, "I am." And I said, "How?" And he said, "The microwave." It is precious. But, it's those moments, right, Angela? It takes us full circle. It's like, we try to be these really good moms and connect with these little boys and raise them to be these beautiful, glorious men. But the thing is that when you're in the weeds and you're in the trenches, as I like to say, those years aren't easy. You're trying to connect, you're trying to, soak up those moments. And then we have this other half of ourselves and our identity, which is so much about being influential, having an impact, we're created to be a certain way. We're created to make waves and an impact. And like we want to, make a difference in the world. And it's kind of like we're making a difference at home. We want to know what that is and how we can make a difference in the workplace in that other sector. And it's difficult. It's hard. We just keep plugging away. And I feel like at some point, those two worlds really they really coexist in a beautiful dance, but it takes a minute to get there. And one of our guests, Neha, was always saying, like, it's not always going to be perfect. There's always going to be like the balls aren't always going to be balanced. The scale is not always going to be balanced, but it can be beautiful. And so I hope, just like you, I hope that our women who are listening today can help, we can help them find that balance and they can find that joy and that peace that
Yes.
comes from that.
Yes, so well said. Yeah, the integration, that peace, knowing that you are enough and you're doing a great job is really where it matters.
Yeah, we're so self-critical.
We really are. That's why I'm always telling moms, you're doing a great job. I mean,
Yeah.
honestly, you're able to have a full-time, you're a full-time mom, right? We never get a break
Yes.
from being a mom, and then to have any other job, hobbies, and, stuff on top of it. I mean, it's the icing on the cake. It's giving us purpose and fulfillment, and really helping create this better life that is really important to showing up as a mom, especially for the women that, choose to continue working and living out their career. I think it makes them happier, better marriages, better mothers, because they're not pouring into, I mean, it's great to pour into your kids. It's important to also pour into yourself.
And I never really understood that. I don't know about you, but I never really understood, well, why would I have to have something else? When I was young, I was like, I just want to be a stay-at-home mom and I just want to do it. It's going to be so great. I'm going to pour all my energy. I have so much to give, right? And I kind of beat myself up. We talked about this. I beat myself up thinking, why do I need something else? Why do I feel like I need something else? Well, the reality is we're multifaceted people. And
Mhm.
we've been created this way and we have so much to give. The nurturing that we give our kiddos and all that love, that nurturing is needed in the world, in the
Yeah.
workplace. And leadership in all areas of society, that beautiful, nurturing piece of ourselves is necessary to be in other spaces. And when we start to give it, it does give us a boost of energy and excitement and really fulfillment. And so I understand it now on the other side. But man, when I was in the trenches, I was like, why? Why do I have this weird nagging need to go work? Like,
Yeah.
so it's just such a confusing thing for young moms. But man, I'm just so glad to have met you today, Angela. You give us so much great stuff. And so I just want to say thank you.
Thank you, Jody. Appreciate it. I'm happy I was here and we got to have this conversation.
For sure. Well, that's a wrap on this episode of Influential Women. Of course, remember, this is where we empower, we connect, and we inspire women who are leading, creating, and redefining what is possible. Angela did great today. She gave us all the things. So we'll have to go listen to her podcast, and those links are going to be attached below. So until next time, I'm Jody O'Brien for Influential Women. Can we do it?